A whistleblower has come forward in the Joe Biden Autopen scandal, and let's just say things are heating up. You guys got to see the latest on this.
Trump's got a new nickname for the big guy. He's now called the Autopen. Bondi and her team are investigating whether Biden was competent and whether others were taking advantage of him. Did the Autopen know what it was signing? The Autopen signed 8,000 pardons. But did Joe know? Was the pen going behind Joe's back and letting Hunter sign with it? Did Dr. Jill use the pen? Did donors? We're not sure. But we're finally going to get answers.
When you look at these last-minute Biden pardons, the big ones, Biden siblings, Fauci, January 6th committee.
That's right.
Most of the big ones have the same very neat signature. We would expect that probably to be the Autopen. Is this White House of the opinion that the only pardon that would count is one that the president signed himself?
The president is making a good point when he discusses the usage of the Autopen. Who was running the country for the past 4 years? Perhaps those documents were signed with the Autopen. As you saw, Ed Martin made an announcement at the Department of Justice this morning to launch an investigation because the American people deserve answers.
From the Bible, about to be sworn in a second time. And the Autopen was on a pardon bender. The Heritage Foundation did their own investigation. Quote, "We gathered every document we could find with Biden's signature over the course of his presidency. All used the same Autopen signature, except for the announcement that the former president was dropping out of the race last year. Then they did a side-by-side. These are the signatures from Biden's final day. Pardons for the family, the J6 committee, Fauci, Milley, all neatly signed, identical. This 82-year-old's penmanship never wavered, not even a smidge. But this goes back decades. The Autopen was first used regularly by President Truman. He used it for simple stuff like thank you notes, nothing serious. Obama changed that. Barry had a portable Autopen that he used in Europe to sign major legislation. First time a machine ever signed an actual bill. The pen was the best kept secret in the Oval. It lives in the White House, typically in the Office of Presidential Records. How does it work? Simple. The president gives a thumbs up, the doc gets stacked, Autopen goes to work, and then a final verification.
So they say that the president gives the thumbs up, but we have no way of actually knowing if that is true. Do you think Joe Biden was giving the thumbs up for the Autopen being used, or he didn't know what was going on? I happen to believe that it was the latter, and they just took advantage of a man who was weak and not capable of fulfilling the duties of his presidency. And for anybody out there who claims the Autopen was never used, there are people out there. I have heard this rebuttal. It is a statistical anomaly for every single signature to match perfectly. I don't care if you have the best penmanship on earth. It's not happening. It just goes to show what a scary concept this should be. I don't know why this is even allowed. You cannot write your name on any piece of legislation, then it should be null and void. Any legislation that was passed using this Autopen should be thrown out. Because quite frankly, there is no way of knowing if Joe Biden allowed this.
Modified it. They said, yeah, Autopen counts, but one catch. Quote, "We emphasize that we are not suggesting the president may delegate the decision to approve and sign a bill. Only that, having made this decision, he may direct a subordinate to affix the president's signature on the bill." The big question, did Biden direct someone to sign his name or not? Or did aides have free rein? Speaker Johnson says Biden was out of the loop.
Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, And he looks at me stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order 3 weeks ago. And he goes, no, I didn't do that. And he's arguing with me. He genuinely did not know what he had signed.
Even Biden's West Wing knew the Autopen was the real chief. Two former White House sources said a top Biden aide may have gone rogue, using the Autopen like it was their own magic wand. Crypto czar David Sachs says Pocahontas wielded the wand.
What the Biden administration was doing, and let's face it, it wasn't Biden. Elizabeth Warren controlled the Autopen during that administration. She, for some reason, has this pathological hatred of the crypto community. She wants to drive this community offshore. She doesn't want it happening in the United States. That's the wrong policy for the United States.
If Biden didn't approve the use of the Autopen for a certain order, then that's forgery. It's falsifying a federal document. That's a major felony. Also, if the president isn't competent to be president, then he's not competent to use the Autopen. All the books, all the videos, all the chaos we saw for 4 years could be used as evidence to prove he wasn't competent. Investigators should be looking at emails from White House insiders discussing Autopen protocol. A smoking gun document or a whistleblower could blow the whole thing wide open and invalidate pardons, executive orders, even legislation. Simone Sanders was there, but don't you dare ask her about a pen that ran the country.
I have to ask who's actually making the decisions. Who is actually running the country? Everybody wants to say Joe Biden wasn't running the country. I know for a fact he not only read his presidential daily brief, he was engaged in the meeting, he asked questions, and he gave directives. Donald Trump won't even bother to read the iPad.
That right there is scarier than anything George Orwell has ever written. The amount of propaganda and manipulation to try and get the general public to believe that Donald Trump is not with it and he doesn't know what's happening in his White House. Yet Joe Biden, he was a master and he was with it the entire time. He knew everything that was happening in the White House. Do you want us to not believe our own eyes? I mean, all you had to do was stick a smartphone in Joe Biden's face and ask him one question, and he had no idea how to answer. We're being told to believe that he's the smartest guy ever. He can do anything. We should never doubt him. Give me a freaking break. There's no way in her heart that that woman actually believes what she is saying. Like, she has to believe that she's the villain in this story. She's trying to trick the general public, every American, just for the sheer reason that it helps her politically. It helps further her and the Democrats' agenda. Not only did she have the audacity to say Joe Biden was with it and he knew what was going on, but you also try and say that Donald Trump is not with it and he has no idea what's happening in the White House. Anybody who believes a word that comes out of her mouth is nothing but a useful idiot.
Biden's the one who got lost in a closet. Jake Tapper, he already confessed and cashed in on the truth. And since he did, CNN has to cover the Autopen investigation, right? They better if he's talking like this.
But somebody asked me, I forget who it was, because but somebody asked me, like, was there an effect when Fox News covered something about Biden that you would revulse from it? And actually, it was the exact opposite. I would be like, what is this? What is this point? What happened? What happened? What happened? I had the opposite effect. But I think you're right that is a phenomenon. Oh, Fox is covering it. It must be false. And that's not the case.
Yeah, no kidding. We don't write books to break news. That's why we have TV shows. We tell the truth right away. All these tell-alls aren't helping the media's credibility. They made it worse. Their ratings look like border crossings, way down. And now the knives are out. MSNBC wants to burn Tapper's book in a bonfire.
No huge banners on the cable news network that recently devoted itself to the issue of presidential mental acuity. That network did not dare devote itself to the mental acuity of Donald Trump. That network decided that the mental acuity of Joe Biden last year is a more important story now.
Vaulted, the secret to secure gold savings. Hate to break it to you, but that $20.
No one at that network suggested that Joe Biden was ever incapable of doing the job of president. Their critique of Joe Biden is that he was incapable of delivering a sharp and polished television debate performance, which would have been true of every single president prior to John Fitzgerald Kennedy.
That's Lawrence O'Donnell. The guy, he needed a vacation, remember, 50 days into Trump's term because he was exhausted. Maybe he should take a cognitive test. Hey, your rules, not mine. The machine's never been weaker. When there's fighting between MSNBC and CNN, we've divided and conquered. Joy Reid, she has her own war stories. She says Comcast tried to put parental controls on her phone.
Once I got to, NBC, and I too joined Twitter back in 2000. I think I joined in 08 or 09, and the bosses were horrified. And anytime I would tweet anything, I would get calls. I would get, please get off Twitter. We hate it. They just, they don't like that it pulls their talent and their reporters out of their control, because now you're not running what you're tweeting through standards and practices. It's giving your personality directly to the audience, which they don't like because it's no longer managed and curated by them. And they don't want people breaking news.
Comcast wasn't worried Joy was going to break news. They were worried she was going to blame the Jews. If Democrats were smart, they'd treat their machine like a Tesla and firebomb it and build back better. It's the only way to cure TDS.
There's a divide between what I would say two teams in the Democratic Party. There's team restraint and team resistance, right? There are those in team resistance who feel like we should react hysterically to everything that Donald Trump says or does. And then there are those who feel like we should pick and choose our battles and be strategic. But I worry that the momentum is on the side of hysterical, hyperbolic resistance, and the enormous expenditure of time and energy and resistance might crowd out the restructuring and moderation that needs to happen within the Democratic Party.
Good luck. Nobody believes a Democrat anymore. Half the party just confessed to the crime of the century, and the other half's having margaritas with MS-13. When you're hooked on TDS harder than Irish Rosie on Xanax, an Autopen investigation is not what the doctor ordered. They're going to need a united front.
I would say that the advent of social media was the beginning of the end for cable news networks like CNN, ABC, MSNBC. Although we didn't know it then, back in 08, 09, 2010, it took about 5 to 10 years for it to actually take effect. And then when Trump came up with the moniker fake news in 2016, that's when the ball really started rolling, and then people said, they've been lying to us? They've been saying this for years? I saw a video on Twitter that was in direct contrast with what you guys have been telling me. What else have you been lying about? I think it's safe to say that over 10 years ago, 90% of us just believed the news because why would they lie? We're just watching the news. They're telling us what's going on in the world. But then when they started putting a spin, an agenda behind every single thing that they do, you can't miss it now. If I turn on Netflix, I see propaganda within the first 2 minutes and I get sickened. I have to turn it off. The level of manipulation and brainwashing that these people try and push on you, once you wake up, there's no going back. So that's why every year CNN and MSNBC, they are dying a slow death because less and less people are believing their slop anymore. There are fewer sheep in the world today than there were 5 years ago. And at this rate, I don't know how they can be a profitable news organization in 5+ years from now, because everything that comes out of their mouth seems like it's a lie. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this down below. Do you think we will ever get arrests in the Joe Biden Autopen scandal? Do you think anybody will be held accountable? And if so, who do you envision that being? Let me know. I'd love to know your thoughts. And if you enjoyed, make sure to smash that like, comment, subscribe, and wish you guys nothing but the best. Till next time.